GitLab, and this is an AMA. Tucker, you have the first call. And if Tucker isn't online yet, Tim, you have the second question. If Tim isn't online yet, Mike Miranda, you have the third question.
Hi, Sid. My question was, who is one person you've met that had you starstruck?
Well, we met P. Diddy once after clubbing in Ibiza, and we were with Sash, a friend, and she had a nice chat with him. But when I tried to gather all my courage and walk up, his bodyguard was like, well, Mr. Diddy is a bit tired right now, or something like that. So no game. I didn't get to meet him. And I think the other person is Linus Torvalds. I met him at the Open Source Leadership Summit by the Linux Foundation. And I could have maybe mentioned that I was the CEO of GitLab, but I thought that was weird and I didn't. Well, that would have been totally appropriate and would have given him some context. So I messed that one up. Thanks for the question. I split your questions up into two, so you get the next one as well.
Perfect. And thanks for answering. So who is one person that your younger self would not believe that you're friends with now?
Yeah, I think the most unreal experience was during Y Combinator demo day. When I was back in the Netherlands, I was watching the tech scene in Silicon Valley for years, 15 years or something like that. And the biggest blog was TechCrunch, and Michael Arrington was the biggest personality. So to have that person walk up to you and say, thank you for investing, you're like, oh my goodness, you're this guy that I've watched everything you wrote for 15 years, and now you're here thanking me. And of course, they were just being gracious and polite by saying that, but it just felt weird. I took it a bit too literally, and it felt weird and unreal, and it didn't get any more normal after that. Like, I know that Y Combinator demo day ended. Well, there was a very well, Ashton Kutcher was there, and it was the end of demo day, and we're kind of in a mass of people exiting the building. He's like, hey, do you have a card? I'm like, no, I'm out of cards. Do you have a card? He's like, no. Well, our assistants will call each other or something like that. I didn't have an assistant at the time, but whatever. And he ended up investing. That was also super, super weird. I hope that was the answer you were looking for.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Sid.
Thanks for asking. Tucker?
Hey, good morning. So I was, what were the ambitions behind Mattermost integration and the Gitter acquisition? And are we still on track for those ambitions? Any chance we're gonna dog food those? And was that part of the ambition, or?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Thanks for asking. So I think Mattermost was a bit of a reactionary move, because what we saw happening was Atlassian had HipChat, and we figured that Atlassian would turn out to be our main competitor. Right now, it seems like GitHub is our main competitor, so that didn't really pan out. And then as for needing a chat product, it turned out that they went from HipChat to Stride, and then they sold that to Slack. So the audience for that product was much broader than just DevOps. Chat kind of originated with developers. They were using IRC before. I met my wife on ICQ, so I soon confused the two. But they were using that first, so it almost seemed like a good fit to also offer a chat product. But it turns out like everyone in the world is now using chat. So your customers are very different. You're selling at a company level, not just to the to kind of the dev and ops and security people and the product managers. Every single person in the company should be on it. So that changed. at a certain point, we were like, oh, we're not gonna spend any time. We bundle Mattermost in Omnibus, and we were spending time there. So we said we're gonna stop that. And then Ian Chen, the CEO, said, hey, we can take on that burden. So we'll update it for you, because for us, it's really great that it's bundled in GitLab. So that's the current arrangement. We don't, it's not a big incentive for us, but also it doesn't cost a lot. And still, for the people who have installed Mattermost via Omnibus, they're happy that it's being maintained. So it's a win for our customers, and it's a win for Mattermost. So, good news all around. Then for Gitter, that was in the sense that we wanted to be the destination for open source. We wanted to compete with GitHub there. And I think we've been very successful with self-managed instances. So if you run your own forge, like Debian or KDE or big projects like that, GitLab is doing very, very well, and that's great. However, if it's about a SaaS service, there's a bit of a network effect where you want to be there where other developers already have accounts, and that place right now is GitHub. So there's some projects, and we're super grateful for them, like F-Droid and iTerm, that host on GitLab, and that's a good experience for them, and we should make sure we take care of them. But the whole move of all open source to GitLab hasn't materialized. Now, Gitter is a great product, and I'm super excited to see like it's still being used a ton. It's still people love it, and we're adding new features. We've been working on threads, and Eric is doing a super good job there. But because it has a limited revenue potential, our investments are also limited. So it's kind of a very gradual increase in features and making it better. I'm quite enamored with chat products. I think they're super interesting, and I think GitHub just launched a kind of a discussions tab as well. So it's kind of a space to watch. We want to make sure that Gitter is available, that it works well. It's cool that you can log in with GitLab now. I'm looking forward to the people using the threads feature and just gradually improving it. But we can't put like 20 people on it because there's not that revenue upside. Cool. Thanks for that. Tim won't be present. Tucker, do you mind reading his question?
Sure. How can we ensure that dog fooding doesn't take too much of our focus? I think there's an immense amount of value when we dog food our product, and yet sometimes we build features that we do not use, and they seem to be at risk of being ignored as the dog food features are amplified.
Yeah, I think the question has a bit of contrast. Like, on one hand, how do we make sure we don't overdo it? On the other hand, like, it's super useful. I think right now, like, first of all, yeah, dog fooding isn't easy. Like, it creates inefficiencies. Like, we have an existing product we use, we're happy with it, and now you got a dog food, the GitLab one that is still up and coming. So it creates inefficiency for the people having to dog food, but we think it will be worth it. In the end, GitLab has to be great as a product, and we know if we use it ourselves, there's just this super rapid improvement cycle. We've never seen any feature in GitLab become popular without us using it ourselves. So that's the step that every feature has to go through. And until that's done, basically we can stop developing new features, we can stop promoting it to customers, because we first need to use it ourselves. So far, I've not seen us go over the top where the inefficiencies are so detrimental to the organization that I would take it back. There is the opportunity, if you think that will happen, like, make it trade-off up front. Like, clearly indicate, like, hey, we thought about dog fooding, but really it doesn't meet our requirements because of X, Y, Z. We try to push the product manager for it. We considered writing those features ourselves, but it's really impossible for us to use. What I see happening more often is that the trade-off is implicit, and that it's like, oh, we looked at it, but it wasn't, we like to stick with what we know. That's not good enough, and we got to do better there. In the end, our success as an organization is based on our product being great, and we should be using it ourselves. And yeah, if someone's seen a situation that's over the top, please let me know. But so far, I'm seeing a lot of the reverse, where people aren't doing it enough and aren't accepting that they might be a bit more less efficient, but for the greater good. So that's the direction I'm pushing. Do you mind reading the next question from John as well?
Sure. What is your strategy for staying on top of all the Slack messages and emails you receive? Do you follow a specific methodology?
Yeah, Sherry, I see you made some notes. You want to answer the question? I'm not sure Sherry's in the calls. I'll have a first go at it. Sherry helps me by starring emails that I should process, because those are not all emails. I use the reminder function in Slack extensively. And then Sherry uses labels, auto filters as well to help out. No problem, Sherry. Darren, you want to verbalize the next question?
Hey, Sid. Yeah, I am curious what your top 3 travel destinations are, what you're looking forward to once we can fly again, a novel concept.
Yeah. Yeah, first and foremost, I'd love to go back to the Netherlands. I think since yesterday, it's gone a bit less likely because it seems too hard to get back in the US, but my parents are there, my siblings are there, so and so our parents and siblings. So we'd love to go back there. We had a flight to Hawaii that we weren't able to make, which is small potatoes compared to what other people are going through. But I think from San Francisco, it's a relatively easy flight, and it's a magical place. So I'd love to go back there. Emily?
Morning, Sid. So as your role as CEO has changed over time, what's something that you used to do that you don't do anymore that you miss doing?
That's a good question. Well, I used to be a developer. In the beginning of GitLab, I wasn't developing that much. I made some SSH code, but it wasn't very good. But I mostly was like walking around with a laptop all the time, because if GitLab.com went down, I had to fix it. But I miss kind of that creative muscle. It's super satisfying to have a lot of control over what you're making, and I think it's quite fun being an engineer. So I started developing again, and I made a feature for GitLab called Product Analytics, and it's a very painful and shameful first minimum viable change, but I hope that people are already starting to contribute and helping to improve it, and I'm super excited about the possible future for that.
Awesome, thanks. Marcus?
Marcus is not in attendance, so Emily, maybe you could read his question.
Marcus asks, are there certain aspects of GitLab or messaging that you feel SDRs should be utilizing more heavily in their outreach during the stay-at-home period?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we can really help people do remote better. And there's a lot of stuff that's like natural in GitLab that is eye-opening to people. We think it's super obvious that you should have a Google Doc with everyone in it, with an agenda, and take inline notes and put your name in front of questions. That is super obvious to us, but it's not normal. Like, no other company does that. Like 99% of companies don't do this. So there's a lot of stuff you can help companies by showing them, teaching them, educating them. So I think that's a super important role we have. I've seen like our remote ebook is now part of the curriculum for a lot of companies on how to do remote better. Another thing is a lot of companies now want to simplify their stack. They want to get more efficient. So I think that's a good message. Like, hey, with GitLab, you can save on integration cost. You can do more with the people you already have. A lot of companies have hiring stops right now. So there's increasing demands on changing things, but they have to do it with the same amount of people. With GitLab, you get more efficient because you get a faster cycle time. There's less cancellations, less coordination needed. You get more done. And last but not least, with GitLab, they can probably save money, even if you just look at the licensing cost of the existing solutions, especially if they're paying a ton for security solutions right now. So I think those are messages that people can take home. Tucker, I think number 9 is yours.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to label it.
No problem.
So yeah, so it's federated GitLab, which, just to frame for everyone, instead of having a single instance with multiple licenses, having multiple instances with a single license, is federated GitLab a possible solution to our lack of multi-tenancy options on self-hosted. I have read the handbook on a description as to why we're not pursuing multi-tenancy and the risks of that, but it seemed to lean into the single instance with multiple licenses. And I attached a use case link in the bullet point A, a hyperlink. But in short, National Labs has 1,500 basic users, and it's because they have an internal SaaS model.
This is a public live stream. Are you sure the customer is comfortable with you mentioning them?
I believe it wouldn't. Well, I'm saying a national lab.
Okay, cool. That makes sense.
Yeah. So not which one, but a national lab, and it's roughly 1,500 users or basics. And this is just a pickle that oftentimes people get cornered into, regardless of the national lab. It's kind of a commonality, but they create an internal SaaS model. The risk assessment from the highest level is, well, let's just roll out basic. And then what happens is the ease of access to a licensing, it goes way down for the individual teams through that internal SaaS model versus communicating with us directly. The budgeting simplifies dramatically. So then they have a massive amount of basic users who the gravity of the situation is to not get away from basic, because if they want ultimate or anything like that, they have to deal with a whole complex system of bureaucracy. Plus, they deviate from the massive monolith ecosystem of GitLab that's already spun up internally. So now they have to segregate themselves in their own environment. So that's one of the problems I see with some of the self-hosted licensing model. And I'm wondering if federated GitLab has been looked at, and what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think that federated GitLab would be a technical solution to a pricing problem. So I don't think that makes sense. There's a lot of reasons we want one organization on one plan, and I'm sure you're familiar with them, but for reference, I put them in item C. So I would see this as kind of, it's not a technical problem, it's a pricing problem. And I do recognize that national labs are unlike almost any other organization in that they serve many constituents, and so I'd really encourage to work with our sales leadership to find a solution to that, because it sounds like it's a pretty unique situation and hopefully needs a unique solution. Thanks for asking. Appreciate you bringing it up. Simon. No, Simon is not here. Emily, would you mind reading the next one?
Yeah, happy to, if I can find the doc again, which I don't have it actually. Does someone who has it open want to read the doc?
Mike?
Yeah, sure, I can read it here. If you couldn't be the CEO of GitLab anymore, what would you do? i.e., what's next for Sid? Tone isn't meant to be lighthearted, just FYI.
Yeah. I wouldn't want the heavy version of this question. First of all, I love my role at the company, and so I'm not planning to change. This is the most interesting thing I've ever done. This is the best company I've ever worked at, and I still learn a ton of stuff every day, and I get to work with really smart and motivated people. So I'm having a ton of fun, and I'm not looking to go anywhere. If you wonder what other things I do, I said for May 1st, I'll work on the software-defined radio. I thought that was that's an interesting area. It's pretty cool that you can just stick a card in, and you can find not just a few different radio protocols, but you have access to all of them. So I'm looking forward to exploring that more. I'm also an investor in TLake.com and in doublegdp.com. And TLake is a simpler password manager. I've been kind of frustrated, or maybe for peer frustration with password managers. I've asked my sister to use 1Password, and we were on a boat, and she's super smart. She's digital native, computer savvy, and just seeing what she had to go through with like having to print out something. Like we were on a boat, and at home she does have a printer, but not everyone in this world has a printer. And like you have to store that in a vault. Like I don't know anybody with a vault. If you have a vault, don't tell me, because that's not smart. But like most people don't have a vault. Like where do I put that piece of paper? So I just think it's very inconvenient, and TLake is trying to make the password manager for the next billion people, because I think they're too hard to use. And then DoubleGDP, the inspiration for that was seeing the kind of the refugee crisis in Europe a couple of years ago, where a lot of people need to move out of their existing homes and cities to go somewhere else where they can be more productive. But probably a lot of that can be solved by building better cities. So that's what DoubleGDP is providing the software for. Matt, you have the next question.
Yep. Hey, Sid. I was curious if you could provide some guidance, or maybe you could kind of give us the messaging that you would offer up around our customers who are really interested in Gold and Ultimate, but they can't see a path to really converting all licenses over there because it's too difficult, or just because of the costs. I know it's probably a pricing issue, and our sales leaders have given us some creative ways to address this, but a lot of my customers ask, is this on the roadmap? Is your leadership team planning on creating a way where we could have 10 people using this instead of all like 500? And I was just curious what response you might offer up for customers as we run into this.
Yeah, it's not on the roadmap. We're not planning to do that. 9C has the logic behind that, but in short, it is, we understand that not everyone will use all the features of GitLab. So it's already a blended price. So if you go to a model where say, oh, just these people actually read the security reports, then you'd have to charge more than $99. Like some of our competitors charge more than $99 a month for like a small subset of our features. So that's what you end up doing. And we think the administration of just all these different tiers is just going to make sales harder and make it harder both for us, but also for our customers who have to keep track of all those things. And the conversation gets harder. So we have a blended pricing model. That's not uncommon. Like Salesforce does the same thing. And it's a blended price. So it's not like, hey, if we split it up, we could have only a few people on $99. No, it's like those few people have to pay $1,000 a month. So it's a blended price. We feel comfortable with that. But I can see, look, it's a big step up from the mid tier to the top tier. And I'm glad that the sales leadership is being supportive and finding solutions wherever they're needed.
Thanks.
Thanks. It's the last question as well. We're also at time. So thanks for the questions, everyone. Really appreciate them. Great rest of your day.